The Caribbean Sea is calm. Off the coast of Venezuela, the water is a tranquil blue, belying the tensions simmering just beneath the surface. This region has become a geopolitical flashpoint. Global powers converge here. Local disputes can have international consequences. The United States has initiated a complex strategy in the region. It is a campaign of maximum pressure against the government of Nicolás Maduro. This is not a formal declaration of war, but it is a high-stakes confrontation that could spiral out of control. The situation is delicate, an intricate web of politics, economics, military posturing. One wrong move could ignite a much larger conflict. The American strategy is multifaceted with several stated objectives. Washington aims to weaken or even overthrow the Maduro government. Washington wants to secure its interests in the region's vast oil reserves. There is a declared mission to combat international drug trafficking. The policy also aims to contain the growing influence of Russia and China. External pressures are compounded by domestic political considerations in the United States. Understanding this crisis requires looking at a map. Satellite view. Venezuela at a strategic crossroads in the Americas. Long coastline on the Caribbean Sea, a critical shipping lane. A long, porous border with Colombia. Proximity to the southern coast of the United States. Geography turns a regional dispute into a hemispheric concern. Outside actors complicate the picture. Russia, China, Iran. They provide economic, military, and diplomatic support to the Maduro government. For them, Venezuela is a strategic asset, a challenge to American dominance. The standoff becomes a proxy arena for larger rivalries. The Caribbean is a chessboard where major powers maneuver for influence and advantage. From the perspective of Washington, the situation in Venezuela represents a direct challenge to its interests. The official policy is one of maximum pressure. This is a comprehensive strategy that employs economic tools, diplomatic tools, military tools. The primary aim is to force a change in leadership in Caracas. The United States and dozens of other countries no longer recognize Nicolás Maduro as the legitimate president. They instead support the opposition leader, Juan Guaidó. The pressure campaign is designed to isolate the Maduro regime, cripple its finances, and ultimately lead to a democratic transition, as defined by the US and its allies. The economic centerpiece of this strategy is a series of powerful sanctions. These measures are intended to cut off the Venezuelan government's revenue streams. The most significant of these is the oil embargo. The United States has effectively blocked Venezuela from selling its crude oil on the international market, a devastating blow to a country whose economy is almost entirely dependent on oil exports. Further sanctions target key officials and government entities, freezing their assets and restricting their ability to travel or conduct business. The goal is to create so much economic pain that the regime either collapses from within or is forced to negotiate its exit. Beyond economics, the strategy involves a significant diplomatic push. The United States has led a global coalition of countries to recognize the opposition government. This diplomatic front attempts to bestow legitimacy on Maduro's rivals while stripping it from his administration. It involves constant engagement at international forums like the United Nations and the Organization of American States. The objective is to create a unified international voice, condemning the Maduro regime and calling for new elections. This diplomatic isolation is a crucial component of the pressure campaign, aiming to leave Maduro with few friends and fewer options on the world stage. Finally, there is a military dimension to the maximum pressure strategy. While US officials often state that all options are on the table, direct military intervention has so far been avoided. However, the United States has increased its military presence in the Caribbean. Naval warships patrol the waters off Venezuela, ostensibly for counter-narcotics operations. There is enhanced intelligence gathering and surveillance of Venezuelan military activities. These actions serve as a constant and visible reminder of American military might. They are intended to deter Maduro and his foreign allies, signaling that the United States is prepared to escalate if its interests are threatened. The core objective of Washington's maximum pressure strategy is the removal of Nicolás Maduro from power. This is not a subtle policy, it is an explicit and openly stated goal. The United States views the Maduro government as illegitimate, corrupt, dictatorial. The American administration, along with over 50 other nations, has officially recognized opposition figure Juan Guaidó as the interim president. The strategy is built on the belief that by applying overwhelming pressure from all sides, the internal foundations of the Maduro regime will crumble, forcing him to step aside and allow for what the U.S. defines as free and fair elections. This political objective is pursued through a relentless campaign of diplomatic isolation. The United States has worked tirelessly to build a global coalition against Maduro. At the United Nations, the Organization of American States, in bilateral meetings, American diplomats have consistently pushed a narrative of humanitarian crisis and democratic collapse. The goal is to strip the Maduro regime of any international legitimacy, making it a pariah state. This isolation makes it harder for Caracas to secure loans, trade, political support. It is a form of geopolitical suffocation, designed to leave the government with no allies to turn to and no choice but to negotiate its own departure from power. Alongside diplomatic isolation, Washington has actively supported Venezuela's internal opposition. This support takes many forms, from financial aid for civil society groups to public declarations of solidarity with opposition leaders. The intent is to empower the domestic forces working against Maduro, giving them the resources and international backing to challenge the state's authority. This creates a two-front battle for the Maduro government. It must contend not only with external pressure from powerful nations, but also with a persistent and emboldened opposition movement within its own borders. This dual pressure is calculated to stretch the regime's resources and undermine its control. However, this primary goal of weakening Maduro is also where the strategy becomes most complicated. It is not simply about politics. It is deeply intertwined with the other American objectives in the region. The push for regime change sets the stage for confrontations over oil, military posturing related to drug trafficking, and directly challenges the influence of Russia and China. This singular focus on removing one leader turns Venezuela into a focal point for a much broader set of U.S. interests. Every action taken to weaken Maduro has ripple effects, escalating tensions, and raising the stakes for everyone involved in this complex geopolitical drama. Beyond the political goal of ousting Maduro, two powerful economic and security interests drive U.S. policy: oil and drugs. Venezuela sits atop the largest proven oil reserves on the entire planet. This makes the country a major strategic prize in the global energy market. For decades, the United States was a primary customer for Venezuelan crude. But the maximum pressure campaign has weaponized that relationship. The U.S. has imposed a crippling oil embargo, preventing Maduro from exporting his most valuable commodity. The stated goal is to starve the regime of cash, but the deeper aim is to influence who controls these resources after Maduro. Control of Venezuelan oil is a long-term strategic imperative for Washington. A friendly Caracas would mean a stable, nearby source of oil, reducing American dependence on volatile regions like the Middle East. It would also let U.S. companies re-engage and invest in Venezuela's dilapidated oil industry. The sanctions therefore serve a dual purpose. They punish the government while creating leverage for the U.S. to shape Venezuela's energy future. Parallel to oil is the declared war on drug trafficking. The U.S. Department of Justice has indicted Nicolás Maduro and other officials on narco-terrorism charges. Washington alleges collaboration with drug cartels and dissident Colombian rebel groups to move cocaine and other illicit drugs toward the United States and Europe. That accusation provides a security justification for increased American military presence. U.S. Navy warships and surveillance aircraft now patrol the Caribbean Sea, directly off Venezuela's coast. These counter-drug operations serve multiple functions. On the surface, they are law enforcement to protect Americans from illegal narcotics. But they also act as military intimidation. The constant presence of U.S. military assets sends a clear signal to Maduro and his allies. It demonstrates American resolve and its capability to project power into the region. The fight against drugs and the contest for oil are not separate issues. They are two sides of the same coin, providing economic and security rationales for the maximum pressure campaign. a new Cold War in the Caribbean. The United States' strategy in Venezuela is not just about Venezuela itself. It is also a defensive maneuver in a much larger global competition. Washington is increasingly concerned about the growing influence of Russia and China in Latin America, a region long considered to be within the U.S. sphere of influence under the Monroe Doctrine. By providing financial, military, and diplomatic support to the Maduro government, Moscow and Beijing are directly challenging American dominance in its own backyard. The policy of maximum pressure is therefore a direct response to this perceived encroachment. Russia's involvement is particularly concerning for U.S. military planners. Moscow has provided Caracas with billions of dollars in loans, often repaid in future oil shipments. It has also sold Venezuela advanced military equipment, including fighter jets and air defense systems. Periodically, Russia sends military advisors and even long-range strategic bombers to Venezuela for joint exercises, a clear projection of power just a few hours' flight from the Florida coast. For Russia, supporting Maduro is a low-cost way to distract and annoy the United States, creating a bargaining chip in other geopolitical disputes, such as those in Ukraine or Syria. It is a classic move of asymmetric rivalry. China's role, while less overtly military, is perhaps even more significant in the long term. Beijing has become Venezuela's most important creditor, having lent the country over $50 billion over the last decade, also secured by oil. This has given China enormous leverage over Venezuela's economy and its natural resources. As Venezuela's oil infrastructure crumbles under U.S. sanctions, Chinese companies are positioned to play a key role in rebuilding it, potentially locking in access to vast oil reserves for decades to come. This debt-trap diplomacy, as critics call it, allows China to expand its economic and political footprint without firing a single shot. Finally, the pressure from Washington is also shaped by domestic political forces within the United States. The influential Cuban-American community, the Venezuelan-American community, particularly in the key swing state of Florida, are strongly anti-Maduro. Taking a hardline stance against the Venezuelan government plays well with this important voting bloc. The rhetoric of fighting socialism in the hemisphere resonates with a segment of the American electorate, making the maximum pressure campaign a useful tool in domestic politics. This means the policy is not just a product of cold geopolitical calculation, it is also fueled by the passionate and often uncompromising demands of an internal audience. Table of Contents, Part 3, Act 2, about 3 sections. Section 1, the rules of engagement. Section 2, crossing the line. Section 3, the escalation ladder. Section 1, the rules of engagement. In the tense arena of international relations, the use of military force is not meant to be a free-for-all. It is governed by a strict set of rules, a legal framework designed after the devastation of World War II to prevent unilateral acts of aggression. The foundational document for this system is the United Nations Charter. This treaty, which most countries, including the United States, have signed and ratified, lays out the very limited conditions under which one state may legally use force against another. Understanding this framework is essential to evaluating the legality of the military posturing and actions seen in the Caribbean. It provides the baseline against which the maximum pressure campaign's military dimension must be judged. The UN Charter is quite explicit. It permits the use of force in only 2 specific situations. The first is the inherent right to individual or collective self-defense. This right is triggered only in response to an armed attack that is actively occurring or is demonstrably imminent. This isn't a license for preventive strikes based on potential future threats. The danger must be immediate and overwhelming, leaving no other choice of means and no moment for deliberation. This high bar is intended to stop countries from launching wars based on speculation or fear. The only other path to legal military action is through the explicit authorization of the UN Security Council. The Security Council, composed of 15 member states including 5 permanent veto-wielding members, the US, Russia, China, the UK, France, has the power to authorize military force to maintain or restore international peace and security. This process requires a resolution to pass without a veto from any of the permanent members. It is designed to ensure that the decision to go to war is a collective one. These 2 conditions, immediate self-defense, or Security Council authorization form the pillars of modern international law regarding armed conflict. Any military action taken outside of this framework runs the risk of being deemed an illegal act of aggression under international law. This is the critical legal context for the increased U.S. military presence around Venezuela. The warships and surveillance flights are not just military signals. They are actions that test the very boundaries of this established global legal order. Section 2. Crossing the line. When evaluating recent U.S. military actions in context, many international law experts raise serious concerns. These critiques aren't limited to Venezuela. They draw parallels to targeted strikes in the Middle East. After such operations, legal scholars and former government officials say the justifications don't meet the UN Charter. Washington often stretches self-defense beyond its legal meaning, creating a dangerous precedent. In Venezuela, the U.S. hasn't launched a direct strike, but its enhanced operations face scrutiny, notably a naval blockade called counter-narcotics. Critics say these go beyond law enforcement and are hostile acts. They ask if drug trafficking really equals an armed attack. They note no immediate, overwhelming Venezuelan military threat to the U.S. seeking UN Security Council authorization is effectively blocked. Venezuela's allies, Russia and China, would veto U.S. resolutions. Collective legal backing is effectively non-existent. Washington has avoided the UN, relying on its own view of self-defense and coalitions of the willing. Many see this as circumventing the Security Council. This gap between action and law is a serious problem. It places the U.S. outside the legal order it helped build. Experts warn that ignoring rules invites others to do the same. That can erode global norms and increase danger and unpredictability. A unilateral intervention, even in the name of democracy or security, could be seen as illegal aggression, undermining U.S. standing and isolating key allies. Section 3. The escalation ladder. The deployment of military assets and the rhetoric of all options on the table. The Caribbean is a textbook escalation ladder. Each step provokes a response and raises tensions. A minor incident, a U.S. naval vessel strays into Venezuelan territorial waters. A Venezuelan fighter jet aggressively challenges a U.S. surveillance plane, or a misunderstanding during a tense standoff at sea. Any of these could quickly spiral into a direct military confrontation. The high concentration of forces in a small area makes accidents likely. The Maduro government is militarily inferior to the United States, but it's not without options to retaliate. It possesses Russian-made anti-ship missiles and advanced air defense systems. In the event of a limited U.S. strike, Caracas could respond asymmetrically. It could target U.S. assets in the region, encourage attacks on American interests by proxy forces, or attempt to close vital shipping lanes in the Caribbean. Such a response would force the United States up the escalation ladder, potentially leading to a much wider, more destructive conflict. A simple punitive strike could evolve into a protracted regional war. The presence of external actors adds another volatile layer. Russia, China, Iran. These countries have their own interests and may not stand idly by. They could provide enhanced intelligence. They could supply more advanced weaponry. They could offer economic lifelines that prolong the conflict. Russia might increase its own military deployments to the region, creating a tense U.S.-Russia standoff thousands of miles from Moscow. This turns a bilateral conflict into a great power crisis with global implications. Ultimately, the greatest risk of military escalation is a quagmire. A quick regime change intervention could become bogged down in a protracted insurgency. Venezuela is a large country with difficult terrain. A divided population may unite against a foreign invader. The Venezuelan military could fracture, with loyalist units fighting on. The result would not be a clean, surgical operation, but a messy, costly, and bloody conflict. The risks of escalation are not just the initial confrontation, but the long, unpredictable chain of consequences that would follow. Section 1. The world's biggest prize. At the very heart of the Venezuelan crisis lies a single, globally significant fact: oil. Venezuela is home to the largest proven crude oil reserves in the world. with an estimated 303 billion barrels lying beneath its soil and coastal waters. The country surpasses even Saudi Arabia in terms of raw petroleum wealth. This immense resource has been both a blessing and a curse. Today, however, this black gold is the central axis around which the entire geopolitical conflict revolves. Control over this resource is not just about economics, it is about power. It is about influence. It is about the future of global energy security. For a major energy consumer like the United States, having a stable and friendly supplier in its own hemisphere would be a monumental geopolitical victory. It would significantly reduce American dependence on oil from the politically volatile Middle East. Proximity matters. Venezuelan crude can reach U.S. Gulf Coast refineries in days, while tankers from the Persian Gulf take weeks. Much of Venezuela's oil is extra-heavy crude. Gulf Coast refineries have invested billions to build specialized facilities, known as cokers, designed to process heavy crude. For a long time, this created a symbiotic relationship. Today, with the U.S. embargo, American refineries have lost a key compatible feedstock. Venezuela has lost its most natural, technologically equipped customer. This geological and industrial reality turns the struggle for Venezuela into a fight over a critical piece of the global energy puzzle. Who will manage Venezuela's oil? Who will produce Venezuela's oil? Who will sell Venezuela's oil? Will a pro-Western government reopen doors to American and European oil giants? Or will it remain under a government that uses resources to build alliances with American adversaries? The answer will have profound implications for the people of Venezuela and for the entire global balance of power. Section 2. The embargo and its aftermath. The U.S. oil embargo is Washington's primary economic weapon. It was implemented through escalating executive orders. The sanctions bar PDVSA from selling crude to the United States. They also threaten secondary sanctions on any international company that deals with PDVSA. The goal: cut off Maduro's main source of hard currency. The embargo devastated Venezuela's oil industry. Production, already in decline, has plummeted to decades-low levels. Lacking U.S. diluents, Venezuela must blend heavy crude and sell at steep discounts. Shipping companies, insurers, financial institutions, their withdrawal created a complex, risky export process. The embargo choked off revenue and deepened the humanitarian crisis. Maduro pivoted to geopolitical allies for lifelines. Rosneft stepped in to market and ship Venezuelan crude to Asia. China accepted oil as repayment for loans. Iran sent tankers with gasoline and condensate in exchange for crude. This shifted Venezuela's role in the global energy map. The embargo pushed the government toward America's rivals, instead of causing collapse. Venezuela became a key energy asset for a coalition countering U.S. influence. The oil now flows east, not north, redrawing the geopolitical map. Section 3. A global chessboard. The struggle over Venezuela's oil has turned the country into a critical battleground for indirect confrontation between the world's major powers. It has become a proxy arena where the United States, Russia, China, and Iran are maneuvering for strategic advantage. Venezuela's fate is now inextricably linked to this larger global chess match, where its oil reserves are the ultimate prize and its territory is the board upon which the game is played. Russia's involvement is a clear example of geopolitical opportunism. By propping up the Maduro regime with loans, military hardware, and assistance in evading oil sanctions, Moscow gains a strategic foothold in the Western Hemisphere. This allows Russia to challenge the Monroe Doctrine, which has long designated Latin America as an exclusive United States sphere of influence. For the Kremlin, supporting Venezuela is a way to create a diversion, tie up American resources, and gain leverage that can be used in other areas of conflict, such as Ukraine or Syria. Venezuela serves as a valuable bargaining chip. China's interest is primarily economic, but with profound strategic implications. As the world's largest importer of oil, Beijing is focused on securing long-term energy supplies to fuel its economy. Venezuela's vast reserves represent a crucial source of future energy. Through its multi-billion-dollar loans for oil deals, China has already locked in access to a significant portion of Venezuela's future production. This economic entanglement gives Beijing tremendous influence. Its economic power makes it an indispensable partner for the Maduro government and a formidable rival to United States ambitions in the region. Iran's role adds another dimension of ideological and strategic defiance. As a fellow pariah state targeted by United States sanctions, Iran sees Venezuela as a natural ally. The tanker flotillas carrying Iranian fuel to Venezuela are a public display of their shared opposition to American foreign policy. This cooperation provides a practical lifeline to both regimes. For Iran, this alliance projects its influence far beyond the Middle East. This transforms the Caribbean into yet another front in the long-running United States-Iran confrontation, making Venezuela a nexus of multiple global rivalries. Section 1. Signals and standoffs. In recent months, the tense situation around Venezuela has been punctuated by a series of specific incidents. The United States Southern Command has significantly ramped up its enhanced counter-narcotics operations in the Caribbean. This has led to a much more frequent and visible presence of United States Navy destroyers and littoral combat ships. These patrols are not merely passive. They actively monitor and sometimes intercept vessels suspected of illicit activities. While officially aimed at drug smugglers, these operations are widely interpreted as a direct military message to the Maduro regime. One particularly notable incident involved the interception of several Iranian-flagged tankers heading toward Venezuela. United States forces seized the fuel cargo from 4 tankers in the Arabian Sea, alleging they were violating sanctions. This action, taking place thousands of miles away, showed the global reach of the American sanctions regime. It was a clear warning to both Tehran and Caracas. Experts noted this was a significant step up from simply sanctioning companies. It was a direct, physical intervention, moving one step closer to a full-blown blockade. From the other side, there have also been provocative signals. The Venezuelan military has periodically scrambled its Russian-made Su-30 fighter jets to escort United States surveillance aircraft. These encounters, while not resulting in shots fired, are inherently dangerous maneuvers that carry a high risk of miscalculation. They are a deliberate show of force by Caracas, a constant reminder of how close the two militaries are operating and how quickly a professional encounter could turn hostile. The geopolitical signals have been just as important as the military ones. Russia has continued its periodic but highly symbolic deployments of military personnel and hardware to Venezuela. These actions force United States military planners to account for a potential Russian response. The reactions from regional neighbors have been mixed, with Colombia strongly supporting the United States stance, while others call for de-escalation and dialogue. These incidents and signals create a complex and volatile environment, where the absence of open war is mistaken for stability, while tensions continue to build just below the surface. Section 2. 3 roads forward. Looking ahead, the trajectory of the Venezuelan crisis appears to lead down one of 3 potential paths. Continued escalation, a prolonged and grinding stalemate, or a return to genuine diplomacy. The first scenario, a continued escalation, is a deeply worrying possibility. This path could be triggered by a single event, such as a direct clash at sea, in the air, or a decision by Washington to enforce a full naval quarantine. Such a move would almost certainly be met with an asymmetric response from Venezuela. This could ignite a cycle of retaliation, drawing the United States into a conflict that is far costlier and more complex than anticipated. The second scenario is a continuation of the current stalemate, which seems the most likely in the short to medium term. In this future, the maximum pressure campaign fails to dislodge the Maduro government, but succeeds in preventing any economic recovery. Venezuela would remain isolated, impoverished, and dependent on the support of Russia, China, Iran. The Maduro regime clings to power, presiding over a humanitarian disaster. This is a grim future of slow-motion collapse, where the Venezuelan people are trapped in a geopolitical struggle with no end in sight, and the country becomes a permanently failed state. The final and most hopeful scenario is a pivot towards serious, multilateral diplomacy. This would require a significant shift in strategy from the United States, moving away from the all-or-nothing demand for regime change. It would involve direct negotiations with the Maduro government, likely facilitated by neutral third-party countries like Norway or Mexico. The goal would not be an immediate political victory, but a series of negotiated compromises. Easing of some sanctions in exchange for concrete steps toward free and fair elections, the release of political prisoners, guarantees for the opposition. The path of escalation carries immense risks of a devastating war. The path of stalemate guarantees continued suffering for millions. The diplomatic path, while challenging and uncertain, offers the only viable hope for avoiding the worst outcomes. It acknowledges the complexity of the situation and prioritizes the well-being of the Venezuelan people. The international community, and particularly the United States, stands at a critical juncture where the decisions made next will have profound and lasting consequences. Section 1. The Crossroads of Policy and Peril. In conclusion, the United States' maximum pressure strategy toward Venezuela stands as a complex and perilous gambit on the global stage. It is a policy driven by a potent mixture of stated ideals and unspoken interests. As we have seen, this approach deliberately pushes the boundaries of international law. By circumventing the UN Security Council, where action is blocked by Russian and Chinese vetoes, Washington risks eroding the very international norms it helped to establish. The central, undeniable driver of this confrontation is oil. Venezuela's colossal reserves make it a strategic prize of the highest order, turning the country into a focal point for 21st-century great power competition. The American oil embargo and sanctions are not merely punitive. They are tools designed to shape the future of Venezuela's energy sector, aiming to pivot its vast resources back toward Western markets and away from the influence of rivals like China and Russia. This has transformed a regional crisis into a global chessboard, where the Venezuelan people are caught in the middle of a struggle for resources and influence, their suffering often a secondary concern. The current path of military posturing and escalating pressure is fraught with danger, a volatile environment where a single miscalculation could ignite a devastating conflict. Such a war would not be the swift, clean intervention some might imagine, but a protracted and bloody affair. The risk of creating another military quagmire is both real and substantial. Therefore, a fundamental reassessment of the strategy is not only prudent but necessary. The path of escalation and stalemate offers little more than continued suffering and heightened risk. The most viable road forward, though challenging, lies in a pivot to robust, multilateral diplomacy. This requires moving beyond the zero-sum logic of regime change and embracing the difficult work of negotiation and compromise. Easing sanctions in exchange for verifiable democratic concessions, facilitated by neutral international actors, offers a potential off-ramp from the current crisis. It is a path that prioritizes the well-being of the Venezuelan people and seeks a peaceful, sustainable resolution over a Pyrrhic victory in a geopolitical chess match.